I had with my dad. I'm very excited. It was a great conversation. So I was watching Candace Owens, and she was talking about Fort Huachuca, and that got my attention. I was like, "What?" And she got a word from a bunch of military people that Fort Huachuca was a um, special, what do you call it? A special military base, a special army base. Special in the sense that it is designed to train military intelligence. Now, Fort Huachuca is the military base I remember growing up on for my young portion of life. I want to say I was like 4 or 5 years old, 6 years old. We stayed there for about 3 to 4 years. Um, so my earliest recollections and pictures that I have are of Arizona. I grew up in Arizona for the earliest part of my life. I grew up on Fort Huachuca, and it is desert. It's in Arizona. I remember we had tumbleweed. It was just like dry and hot. It's a desert, and it's got mountains, and they have a lot of rabbits and lizards. Snakes are everywhere. Fort Huachuca is an interesting place. We had woodpeckers, cactuses. I mean, it's fucking the epitome of the desert. And so I grew up there in desert culture, and me and my dad, we would go to ghost towns. Me and my dad would just take all these wild trips across Arizona. He would take me to Indian reservations. He would take me to ghost towns. So I grew up around a lot of Native American stuff. He exposed me to a lot. They had these, I guess you would say, redesigned old ghost towns, and they were kind of fun, Disney Worldish. They were real. They take these abandoned towns and turn them into destinations for people to travel, and you could get kind of go back to the old Wild West. And so I got a lot of pictures of that. My dad used to always tie something around my head, so I always have like a medallion on my forehead. You'd have thought I was a Native American kid. But I spent a lot of time exploring with my dad, just being out in the desert, just doing a lot of stuff. Um, Me and him just traveling through the desert together. My brother was a baby, so it was just me and my dad. It was a lot of fun, and I remember it. I remember it very well. And I do remember the house we lived in, what it was like. The only difference in the house, and this was talking about that we're talking about the 80s. The only difference, I found some old photos, is we had a courtyard. It was just kind of like a fenced in like wall in the front. So I found a house that looked just like the one I remember. And it's like one carport and very basic. And it's made out of like, what do you call it? Uh, these heavy bricks, like hospital like bricks. And that's what the inside the wall. It was not sexy. And I saw the new housing. Oh, they got nice houses now on the military base, but the ones that I remember, they were very like utilitarian. Like somebody said, World War II. That's what I remember. Um, and that's the officers' housing. That was supposed to be the nice shit. Anyway, now I do remember that the colonels. My father had a friend who was a colonel or associate of some sort. Had several colonel friends, and they lived up in the mountains in some very nice homes, like 3-story homes. They had some like almost like mini mansions. And I remember this particular girl, Margaret, and she played piano and violin, black family, and her mother was older. It reminds me of myself. But anyway, so I called my dad today, and it took me a while because I know my dad very well, and I was like, what am I going to do different to get like new answers? What am I going to do different? What will I say? How will I approach this? So it's taken me a while because I kept thinking through it. I was like, I got one shot. 'Cause I've tried this many times, and I think I've been too casual, and I need to be like more strategic to get this information out of him. That's what I was thinking. And so I called my dad today and I wanted to know because they say Fort Huachuca is a spy base, a military army spy base. This is where they train military spies and agents. This is where my dad was. So I'm like, damn, was my dad like a teacher? Did he teach spies? Was he a spy? I really am curious about this because I just thought it was a regular military base. My dad always told me he was Signal Corps, he did communications. And I'm like, but you at a spy school. You at a military base that trains military spies. So that means all this crazy shit that they be doing in the world as far as US military. It starts in Fort Huachuca. This is central command for intelligence, military intelligence. So this is where the deep shit be going down, you know? And so I was like, man, what if? And so I started thinking about it. And I was like, okay, I got to figure out how to approach him. And I thought about several different things. And I was like, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. So what I did, this is what I did. I called him today and I had my strategy. I said, I'm just going to tell him where I'm coming from. Just be straight up. Just be straight up. And what I did is I told him, I said, I think based on, I told him, I said, I'm watching Candace Owens, and she's talking about Fort Huachuca, and it got my attention. And then she had it revealed to her that Fort Huachuca is a spy base for the military. It's like Central Intelligence Command. Hey, what's up, Mahogany? Girl, I finally talked to my dad today. I had to come strategic. I had to find out how I was gonna, figure out how I was gonna get this information, and I got a lot. I got a ton. I can't believe it, but I think it's my skills. It's my skills. And so I told him, I said, Daddy, I've always been curious. I always ask you stuff, but I got to tell you now that according to them, it's a spy base and military intelligence and something, something, something. And you were located there. And I was like, so I'm thinking you're a military spy, right? So I kind of accused him. And it was so interesting because he was so repelled. I would never do that. I was like, whoa. He was disgusted by the idea of it. And I said, well, what's wrong with being a military intelligence? He said that is the most, he said, I would never, he said, I don't have the morals to do that. He said, that is one of the most, um, what did he say? He didn't say deplorable, but he said some word like, I feel bad for you if that's what you want to do. He said, I would never sign up for that. He said, I know for a fact that they have a military intelligence training school there. That's where the advanced training school is. That's true. He said, but I would never do that. And I asked him why. So, in asking him why, it made me really realize that he's not a spy. He's something close, but not that. And he said that those people, he said, is very dangerous. And I didn't volunteer any conspiracies or anything to my dad. He said they get caught up all the time. He said, I would never do that. He said, you can't trust nobody. He said, they'll hang you out to dry. He said, they'll send you out on a mission and you don't know what you're doing, why you doing it. And he said, and then you mess around, get caught up in the situation. They'll act like they don't know you. I said, what? He was like, it's corruption. So these people are doing all kind of stuff. He said, the higher they are in rank, he said, they just completely, he said, they doing all kind of military contracts, kickbacks, secret missions. You think you a soldier taking a order from an upper and you don't realize they setting you up on something that ain't got nothing to do with the government. He said, especially down there by the border. He said, they'll get you caught up. I said, what? I said, Dad, are you serious? I said, I thought that stuff was just on movies. He said, no. He said, these people who got power and they tell you, and you in intelligence, they send you on a dummy mission. You don't know. There's no actual, information. He said it's something called on an as needs no basis, whatever that means. He said there's no paper trail and you can't explain yourself out of situations you might get in. And he said literally you will be abandoned, abort mission, and they'll act like they don't know you. You get caught up in some shit and you just take the consequences. They'll deny you. I'm like, what? I said, I swear that sounds like movies. He said, where you think the movies get it from? It's real stuff. And he asked me, he said, "You haven't read the Military Times?" I'm like, "Daddy, why would I be reading the Military Times? Why would I be reading that?" He said, "Well, if you want to know about stuff that goes down in these upper ranks and all these other things, the corruption," he's like, "read the Military Times." And I think he said I had to subscribe to it on Apple or something. But anyway, yeah, he said, there's documentation of it there all the time. He said there's plenty of corruption. Let me read these comments. Hey, what's up? Yeah. Oh, you believe him? Absolutely. I've seen some dirt. What? Wow. See, I always just see soldiers running and stuff. I don't think like that. I just think people take orders. I had never really thought about military intelligence. So I asked my dad, I said, "Well, what's so, fancy about Fort Huachuca? And how did you get there? Did you pick? How did you do?" And he told me in his early years that he had to kind of take a test or something. And based on that test, they would kind of figure out what your talents are. So that's how my dad ends up in Signal Corps, which is called communications. And I was like, "Okay, so are you working with spies or like what are you doing?" Because Fort Huachuca is clearly an intelligence. He said that's a school there. Not all of us are involved with that. He said he's never gotten anywhere close to it. I said, "So what did you do? Why were you there?" He said he began at Fort Carson, which is in Colorado, and that's where he got his initial training. And then from there, he was located at Fort Huachuca. And I was like, "Okay." So I kept asking you, Daddy, like, what did you do at your desk? And you just told me regular protocol. What does that mean? I think at that point, because I had accused him of being a spy, and he just he just likes the idea of spies and whatever the fuck they do and all the corruption. He said, I don't know. I don't know what he's talking about. I mean, he said people get caught up. He said he's heard stories. And I was like, what? And um, he talked about, he said, the mountains that you see there in the background? He said, all of that is full of stuff. I was like, what you mean it's full of stuff? He was like, it's operational. I said, have you been inside? He said, no. I said, so you don't know what's in there? He said, no. And if you look at Fort Huachuca, it's flat, flat, flat. And then there's these huge, big, big, big ass mountain. It's true. And he said, it's all kind of shit in there. He said, they be testing, whatever the fuck that means, testing. So I don't know if that's like weapons or high tech shit. He's never been in there. He doesn't, he just knows it exists. So it's some kind of, it's in the picture. And that's one thing I do remember when I lived on the base. It's kind of like Stone Mountain near here. Everything is flat, and you got this big ass mountain all of a sudden. Um, you said yes, man. Yeah, and so he told me there's some kind of operations in cities and buildings and a whole bunch of civilization in this mountain that's high, very very high security. And I asked him, did he have to have high security? And he told me based on what he did that he did, but not no like super super high, because that wasn't the nature of what he did. I asked him, so what do you do? Because I kept saying, at your desk, at your desk. I come to find out my dad did not work at a fucking desk. Y'all know what my dad did? I asked him, I don't understand communications. And so he had to explain it to me. He's never been this open before. Never. And he said he builds basically, he started laughing when I called what I called it. He said, I build out vehicles. He said, I build vans, I built trucks, I built all kind of vehicles. So what he did is he outfitted a vehicle so that it have all the scanners and all the machinery, all the data collection, all of the equipment so that you could have frequencies and communications. Each one is a mobile unit and it can move around. Like, you drive it somewhere. And he will put satellites on it. And he said these vehicles feed information to satellites. So they're communication networks. They're moving communication networks. Like there's satellites built on wheels. And he said that you have overland in the air and in the ocean communications networks, and they're on encrypted. That's the word he used, encrypted networks. And you have to have something that does decoding. And so that's what he did. He built out in the military for the years that he served. He was one who builds out. He said he didn't physically build it. He supervised the production of these. And I said, what are they, spy mobiles? And he started laughing. I said, Dad, you were building spy mobiles? He said, it's communications. It sends messages. So I imagine you put these things on trucks or automobiles or whatever. I mean, on planes. And when you go, like, say, in Iraq, you create these uh, different things. And he said they have what you call fail safe. So if this one doesn't send signal, you got a backup. So he created whole systems, um, interconnected systems of communication for the military so that they could have encrypted communications when they're in the field or at war or wherever they are, that bounces off satellites, he said, and it goes to the vehicle, and then the vehicle does the land level, and then it can go to the ocean level. And there's an interconnectedness. So there's these invisible networks, kind of like I guess cell phone networks, like a 5G. He builds 5G networks in these vehicles, these mobile things. And he said you can't tell from the outside what it is, but inside is like this whole communications hub, and they're all intertwined, and they have to work with each other and decrypt and decode and all this type of shit. So he dealt with high tech, and I was like, that's why, because I couldn't understand when I was young. My dad was really into technology, and I remember when he brought the computer home. Nobody had a fucking computer. Nobody. We were very young. That was not a household thing. People did not have computers. They didn't. Nobody knew what the fuck to do with the computers. They didn't have like Microsoft Word and stuff. My dad was one of the first people to get a computer because computers used to be something that took up a whole like building. And when they got them to the point where they were small and you could actually have one, my dad spent a ton of money getting a computer. And if you could see what the shit looked like, it wasn't fancy. And I remember he was really insistent that me and my brother learn to code, and he had us learn how to turn the bitch on and turn the bitch off, and MS DOS, this, that. I can't even remember it now, but he churned them codes in my head. And he was so serious about that computer. And it makes sense. And I asked him, I said, Dad, is that why you were so into computers before anybody? He was like, yeah, I was exposed to so much technology. So my dad had a knack for technology, which I kind of knew, but I didn't know what he did for the military. You said Sasua is still working under the sea. What is that? What is Sasua is working under the sea? What's that? What's up, V Dub? Hand scanners, thumb scanners. Yeah, my dad was doing some high tech encrypted. So he would outfit whole vehicles so that they could become communication hubs that act independently and dependently on the network. And so that was very interesting. And I guess they can, take in all kind of information, feed it back. And he said it's on different platforms that nobody can detect and stuff like that. So that's what he did. And so I found that very interesting. Um, and he talked about the mountains and stuff like that. And he was telling me how, in the military you have to take a basic training or something, and then you take the test and you get to be more advanced, and then you get advanced training. And he was telling me that they send you around based on what they need. That's why I was asking, how did you end up at Fort Huachuca? And he said that they have different skill sets they need at different bases, and that's how you move around. So my dad went from Fort Carson to Fort Huachuca, and then Fort Gordon, and then Fort Eustis, which is in Gordon is in Georgia, and that's where I grew up mostly, and then Virginia. So yeah, Fort Eustis, Newport News. But I'm just like, wow, I never knew all this about my dad. I had no idea what he did. He would never tell me, and he was telling me about different military clearances and um, how when you know certain stuff you can't share it. But I was just surprised that that's what he did. Um, I knew it was something, but I didn't quite understand. And he didn't do it himself. He was the one, like I guess you say, the engineer of it, how to do it, what to do. And he said he supervised the people who outfitted the vehicles. 'Cause my dad was a captain. He was a captain in the army. Yeah, signal. Oh, signal intelligence. They call it now. Yeah, he's Signal Corps. That's what he called it. Signal Corps, Defense Information Systems Network. Yeah. So that's what my dad did for the military. But he had a lot of negative stuff to say about military intelligence. He was just like them. He was like, nah. He's like that. Mm-mm. I don't. I may ask more later but he told me to go and do my own research. He told me to look into the military Times magazine, and he said that explains corruption. And he said there's a lot of corruption. And he talked about how I told him, I said, were you offended when Pete Hegseth um, said that the military needed cleaning up and this and that? He said the military is pathetic now. He said it's not like it was when he was in the military. He talked about high standards and how your body literally belonged to the U.S. government. He said now they got tattoos, they're fat, out of shape, they doing piercings and weird stuff. And he was like, none of that. He was like, you had to be a uniform person. You had to have a clean body, a healthy body, and that body belonged to the military. And he even said that, he was glad Pete Hegseth was, I was mad about it. I didn't appreciate him talking to them soldiers like that. But my dad said it's necessary because the military has to stay in shape and they have to be ready for the quality of work that's required. And he said they're sloppy now. He said they took the quality and the standards down. They let just anybody in the military. And he said he's not impressed. He said they've let the military come all the way down. And I thought that was interesting. What else did he say about the military? He was saying that the military had always had a standard and understanding that you do not take, and that's one of his critique of the intel. He says the military intelligence, they don't have the same understanding of duty. They can be told by like one or two people they're going on a mission, and whatever that mission is, they need to just take orders, don't ask questions, and that may be void of morality. And he said you might get into some real, fuck shit. And I don't know what he's talking about. These might be things he may not want to go into. And I asked him, have you he's heard stories and this and that? And he said, yeah. And he said, you got cartels, you got people selling weapons. He said he's seen people get caught up because one of the things that you can tell, one of the things you can never tell when you're intelligent, you can't trust anybody. He said they may set you up to see if you are worthy from the inside by trying to buy information. And he said some of these people get contracts and they learn about the weapons. They learn about all kind of things, production, secrets. And he said they get these contracts just so they can sell the information to other countries. So he talked about espionage. And he said that there are people who are placed to be fall people, and a lot of them are in military intelligence. And he said they test you like a secret test. They'll see how far you'll go, and a lot of people get messed up right there. You know, I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure what he's saying. Maybe he's saying like your upper command tells you, "Hey, we're going to sell these documents, or we're going to sell these secrets somewhere, and this is what we need to do," and they just want to see if you're going to do it. But he talked about the sale of information and high level security information, codes, encryptions. He talked about those are things that you run a risk of. And what he's talking about is clearly not something the average soldier deals with. So I don't know if he's seen people that he worked with do this and get caught, and he's speaking on it from that perspective, but he said he's seen things. And I never think about that either. I would think about like a Russian or Chinese or something, like physically being here. I never thought about like military intelligence shopping around military secrets, like getting a price on it, like I'm selling this. But he said that's very rampant. The selling of secret information, um, what do you call it? Prototypes, just a lot of stuff that should be. that people shouldn't know. And I can see how that's a problem. For example, when Iran is fighting against Israel, okay, they got Iron Dome. Somebody must have leaked the goods on the Patriot systems and Iron Dome and the THAAD systems. Somebody got some information, okay? And I don't think the United States knew that. That Iron Dome is supposed to be high tech. It's supposed to have so many different layers where it's impenetrable, right? But we saw with shock and awe that that system was useless. They had developed missiles that are invisible to that system. What good is it? What good is that shit if you can say, "Oh, that's the technology user"? Well, this is what we got instead. So when we shoot this motherfucker off, your system, because we understand how it works, it's gonna be useless. I don't think the United States was prepared. They would have never ever attacked Iran had they known. The Israelis would have never attacked Iran had they known that ass whooping was coming. They really, really thought they was protected. They did that shit thinking that not one missile would hit them. They thought that first of all, they thought there would be no retaliation. But if there was retaliation, they said, "Oh, well, that's no big deal. We got this whole system, Iron Dome, and they're not gonna penetrate. We'll knock anything they got out of the sky." Well, you a motherfucking lie. Iran had some shit for their ass. I literally saw one of those missiles actually um, hitting close to a THAAD. I mean, yeah, to the THAAD, the THAAD system. Is that what it's called, THAAD system? The Iron Dome. Like they was teasing it. They didn't blow it out the ground, you know. And I would see they did something to the system because that motherfucker was misfiring. It was going up like sparks. It was just like going up like a firework. Pow! It's not hitting anything. It was misfiring. How do you spend that much money on fucking missile defense system and this motherfucker is acting like it's a goddamn fireworks? It's just shooting something up in the air, go pop. Like what the fuck? They were literally taking control somehow, some way of the Iron Dome. They made that shit useless, and that's why the Israelis are afraid to fuck with Iran. They don't got no protection. Them missiles rain down on the motherfuckers like crazy. They sent like what 2,000 missiles. They lit that ass up. They tore that shit up, and they hit their intelligence bases. They fucked Israel up. Israel got shook. You hear me? They got shook. So in that case, I knew when I saw it. I said, "Yeah, Iron Dome ain't doing nothing but misfiring, and all the missiles coming through from Iran. Somebody clearly has the technology to defeat this shit, which is sad that you don't know it already. But who would know? They never tested it before. They never had to use the shit because they always had deterrence, right?" And V Dub said, "America plays dirt." That's what my daddy said. He said, "Look up Fort Bragg." My dad was there too. Fort Bragg and Special Forces and Cartels. My dad was at Fort Bragg at some point. Now them hypersonic missiles went past that system. That's what I'm saying. That shit was crazy. I was sitting there with popcorn, like, what? Well, pow, well, pow. I said, no, not the Iron Dome. They bragged on that motherfucker. That thing ain't shit. How? How is that possible? How is it possible? Them missiles was blowing up shit left and right. They was hitting targets. They was hitting planes. They was hitting automobiles and trains. They was hitting any goddamn thing they wanted to. And then they got some missiles that branch off into four different missiles. Motherfucker just spiral out four different missiles. I was like, what the fuck? They say Iran got some shit for your ass. How they say, don't pull that thing out unless you plan to bang. So I've always been very interested. I guess Secretly, I get this from my father. So I never knew. I I'm clearly not getting anything that's high tech. If the shit is on the internet, right? It means it's old. But I have spent years interested in weapons, which is I know it's a little strange for me as a middle aged and 30 something year old black woman, but I've always been very interested in the newest like military technology. I've always been. No particular reason. I just want to see what these motherfuckers can do. And so the thing that most impressed me, and I look at it on YouTube or I go on different, websites and I look at these military weapons. Now, if they're on the internet, they're old as fuck already. It's not that secretive, right? But it's not shit you see every day. But the one that really gets me is the sonar. They got this sonar radio, this fucking high concentrated beam. And that's the shit I'm afraid of. If somebody ever makes guns out of these beams, it's something out of Star Trek. Something out of Star Trek. It's just a high laser beam and it's invisible. And that motherfucker you pointed at something. I saw some trainings they were doing in the ocean. Navy's got these, okay? The Navy got these shits mounted. Fuck all them guns and blasts and gunpowder. Fuck all that. And cannonballs, ain't nobody doing that. Fuck them missiles. They got this shit. They point this sonar beam. It looked like a telescope. That's the best way I could describe it. Long ass tube. That motherfucker heat up. Boom. It don't say nothing. It sends out a sonic radar beam so fucking strong it will explode a whole fucking ship instantly. Smithereens. It toasts shit. Okay? So when I be hearing these like white folks talking about guns and I hear tough ass, I got a gun. Get your guns and bullets. You stupid. You stupid. They got some shit out here. I don't think these people pay attention. And like I said, I ain't no high tech person. I ain't got access to them special. I simply see what's available online as far as military weapons. And they got some high tech shit. And I mean, I'm sure people are familiar with they got some radar waves they send out that just fuck your brain up. Anybody in the vicinity, your brain is done. The microwaves or whatever, they're just you're done. You're gonna pass out or whatever. They got that. I don't know if it's shock waves. I'm not sure what that is. But they send that machine and let it go off. Everybody dropping. Of course, they got high pitched stuff. We've already seen those where they just make your ear damn pop and you fall out. You're overwhelmed with sound. We've seen those. Um, Another thing they have is I found out because I was looking at Cuba and they said that the diplomat in Cuba was having really bad headaches and they was thinking brain damage. And they consistently keep seeing this with anybody who's associated with the embassy in Cuba. Almost all of them keep having brain damage. And it was kind of like, they were trying to keep it quiet, but they got into the media. And I was thinking, like, what the fuck is that? And they said they believe that it is a secret weapon that they're putting somewhere. And so that's the one I'm talking about. It's like subtle, fucked up waves they sending through the air. And so they said they had to do a sweep of the diplomat's room. And they found an alarm clock. And they said that alarm clock had this thing in it. And it was sending out these constant waves. And it's so subtle you don't detect it. But it's doing damage to the brain. It's scrambling the brain. And the only way you know that it is because you got headaches all the time. The guy had chronic headaches. And so that's one of the weapons they use as well. They'll put something somewhere and it'll just be killing your ass slow, melting your goddamn brain. But like that sonic radar thing, if they ever did that shit in the form of a gun, think about that. A high beam that would just on sight, we ain't got to explode somebody's head. It could be more subtle. You send that beam towards that person, nobody sees anything. Nobody has sound. Imagine how dangerous that is. You can just point that beam at somebody. That's why I say I hope they never turn that into an everyday weapon. Fuck a gun. You hear me? We don't ever need that kind of technology to hit the mainstream. That shit would be so dangerous. A beam that is invisible and a motherfucker could be sitting anywhere and send that high beam and fry your motherfucking brain. Your brains just be boiling on the inside. They just, I remember in the 90s, they came out with these lasers. Y'all remember them lasers? And they became a problem in schools because kids would pull these little laser pens out. And all you feel some like, you see somebody with a little red dot on your face. Or boys used to use it and like circle a girl's butt. Them lasers were big trouble because you never could tell who was doing it. We'd have like a pep rally or something in high school, and somebody will get the beams out, and the cheerleader will be standing there, and they'll circle her breast with the beam, doing circle motion. Just stupid shit kids do. But that just goes to show you could never tell who the fuck was doing it. The beam has to kind of be on you or bouncing off of something for people to actually see exactly where it's coming from. It's crazy. So we don't need that kind of technology to be mainstreamed at all. Because people could just, there's no evidence. There's no gunpowder. There's no sound. There's no blood splattering. There's no nothing. You just be fried. Somebody aim that shit at your forehead and sit that beam on your head, and you'll just crumble and crash and fall on down, and nobody know what happened to you. That's some dangerous shit. So they got all kind of technology out here, all kinds. Um, but yeah, I found that conversation with my dad. He said sonar kills fish. Oh, okay. He said I have the videos on my page. They aimed at the defense system and they got real close. Right. Now them hypersonic missiles went past that system. Yeah. And you said high pitched sound can see everything for 1,000 miles. You said can see everything for 1,000 miles. Yeah, man. They got some shit out here. And I think I'm gonna do another dive. I haven't looked in a while to see what other weapons they have. Um, you watch some 007 movies and shit. They have all them weird secret weapons. It's kind of cool, but they got some shit in real life, and that's why people be talking tough. I'm gonna get my guns. I'm gonna get my weapons. I'm gonna get my bullets. Man, shut your ass up. Shut your ass up. That's simplified ass shit. That's like a bow and arrow in this day and age. That ain't shit. Shut your ass up. You know. And I'm gonna be honest with you. That's why I don't be trying to do the most. I don't be trying to do the most. Troublemaking and shit. I don't try to do the most. I live a real simple life. I've had different situations where in the activism I do, people have definitely tried to do things, tried to try me. I'm like, no, I'm good. I was approached by Antifa. No, I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for nah. I'm straight. I'm good. Not going down that road. I'm real simple. I just want to talk to people and negotiate. That's it. I ain't gonna do all that extra stuff. And they tried to catch me up one time. We understand that you having a protest that I ain't having shit. You a lie. You a damn lie. You ain't finna have no crazy protest and they have a shootout. And that's why I stopped the last protest I did. They had all them guns. I said, oop, that's too much for me. Too many masked people with too many guns. I'm good. I'm good. This is going down the wrong path. Nope, nope, nope. I'm going back to the boardrooms. I'm gonna put my suit back on and go to the boardrooms. I am not gonna be standing out here and be responsible for all these motherfuckers with guns. And I'll be like the Black Panthers. You put that shit on me because somebody had a shootout. You crazy? And I got my name on it? Nah. So I decided no more. I usually get a permit for protests. I ain't doing that no more. That's what I told him I said, sir, I always get a permit. I ain't never showed up nowhere without an approved permit. I do everything by the law. So don't put my name. I sent him an email while he was talking. I said, I'm finna send you an email right now to verify for you this phone call. I'm doing that while we talking. Because he working for the, we call it, law enforcement, asking me to verify that I know that you are having a protest this afternoon. No, sir, you don't. You ain't seen my name on no form. You crazy. So I've had to be very careful myself. And the gun thing, guns it's not a big deal, but That's the beginning of trouble. So I play it real safe. I'm very safe with how I do things because I do not want to be in contact with these extremists. Not at all. It don't benefit me. But I'm soon to retire. I'm waiting on to see who the next governor is. If I can work with the next governor, I will go for it. If the next governor is a straight redneck, they're gonna undo everything that I've been getting done, and I'm gonna be done with it. Next generation can deal with this shit, and that's the thing you got to be able to do. You got to be able to pass the goddamn, torch. You got to let the work go. And I remember Lao Tzu said that do the work for work's sake, and do the work and let it go. That's one of the things Lao Tzu, the Tao Te Ching, talks about. Do the work for work's sake. Do the work and let it go. You have to do that. You can't try to possess the work. It's going to evolve. It's going to change hands. It's going to go through time and evolution. You have to let it. You have to be willing to release it. And I'm there. I'm fucking there. I'm fucking there. I've done a lot. I've made more progress than anybody before me on this. And there have been many who have tried. Okay? Many who have tried. I had the strategy. I'm gonna talk to you like you're human. I'm gonna connect to you and we're gonna talk about legalities. We're gonna talk about what's right. And we're gonna see where we can meet in the middle. And that's what I did. Usually the NAACP and all the other organizations, they go in there self-righteous, preaching, shouting them down, talking down to them. You just a bunch of backwoods, da 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 da. Y'all are racist. I didn't do none of that. I didn't do none of that. You Southern, I'm Southern. You white, I'm black. What do we have in common? What do we have in common? What can we navigate here together? I'm here to help you. I'm your friend. I'm gonna help you fix this part. I'm gonna help you fix this Confederate mess you fucking made. How about that? Do you want to extend hands and be in partnership? Let's be in partnership, Governor Kemp. Let's do that. Let's try something new. Let's not fight. Let's negotiate. And that is how, but Governor Kemp is coming to his end. And I don't know if Brad Raffensperger, if he's the next governor, I can work with him. If the AG, the Attorney General of Georgia, um, Chris Carr, if he is the next um, governor, I can work with him. But if it's the current lieutenant governor, it's a wrap. It's a motherfucking rap. Or any of these other Republicans. I can't work with them too. So I can work with them too. I can't work with the other ones. I just can tell. I can tell, it's gonna be some MAGA white nationalist bullshit. So there's nowhere to go from there, you know? You know when your cards are down. And that's the difference between a good leader and a fool. A fool rushes in. A good leader, they sit back and they take the way of the wisdom, right? They become the wizard. And they say, let me survey the battleground. How many troops do I have? How many troops do you have? What strategies do I have on my side? What do you have on yours? I'm outnumbered, outmanned, outpowered. Ain't no point in me shooting off shit and lose the war trying to fight a bullshit battle. No point. I'm gonna go sit my fucking ass down because that means we're gonna be on a high trend for white supremacy, and I can't do this work in a hostile white supremacy environment. I can't do it. I've helped to remove so many Confederate monuments. It'll destroy me to try to continue to do the work under white supremacists. Governors. It just wouldn't be no point. They will intentionally go and undo all that has been done. The best I can hope for under one of them crackers, if the wrong one steps up, is they will leave the work that I have done alone, neutral, neutral. Just leave it where it's at. That's the best I can hope for. But I'm not going to trigger them to undo anything, so I'll leave it alone. Better to be where you are than to go backwards, at least in my mind. But if them other two get in, I'm gonna be up there. I'm gonna be like, hey, my name is May. Can I talk to you? I think we should have a conversation. And I think that's kind of uncanny because I think a lot of times they don't think that, like, they're that's been my, I guess, my claim to fame. They don't think that I surprised them. I surprised them. These white men, these good old Southern elite white men. They're very surprised at me because I'm educated, I'm intelligent, and I'm bold in a way that they have not come across before. And I talk very plainly and not outrageous, but it is off-putting. It's not what they expect. I talk with authority that it surprises them. I tell them, I need you to do something about this. I need you to make this make sense. It's not making sense. Don't you agree? And they be looking like, what the fuck? Let's have a meeting and let's try to work through this together. I just come assuming that everything I'm saying makes sense to you. I'm gonna talk to you like that, like you get it already. And they just kind of go with it. They kind of go with it. So that's been my claim to fame. All of them deal with me that way, you know. And so the next thing is I got to see about this museum. The museum that I asked for is supposed to open in January, and so I need to follow up with the CEO and the governor's office and make sure they got it going. They got 12 million spent. I just want to make sure that that's a sealed deal because they still got this lawsuit out there. But anyway, they still got this lawsuit. They're trying to get an injunction to get this shit closed before it opens. It's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. And I need to just be there to make sure that I keep the pressure on, keep the pressure on. And that's why I'm really wanting to just to open because if it opens, then they will have less of a chance. Oh, no, it's over there by the door, Pooh. It's over there. It'll be less of a chance that they actually close it. If we can get it open, the likelihood they're gonna fight like hell to keep it open. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to look like you made a mistake or you backtracked or these small group of Confederates was able to make you close something that you spent money from the state legislature on. $12 million is not. I think it's actually 14 million. 14 million is a lot of money. And so if we can just get the doors open, that's all I'm waiting for. The doors open. Once the doors open, they'll fight to keep them open. There's nothing wrong with telling the truth. And that's what I wanted this museum to do. I wanted it to be a truth telling. Tell the whole truth. Don't tell them fucking lies, that y'all been sticking by. Stop that. Stop that. Tell the truth. We got to talk about, you know, slavery. We got to talk about the inhumanity of it. We got to talk about the Civil War. We got to talk about, um, what is it called? Oh gosh, right after, right after the end of the war. You know what I'm talking about. Got to talk about that. Got to talk about the civil rights movement. We got to talk about all that, the liberation of black people. We were never meant to be slaves. And this conversation that you want to worship the Confederacy is bullshit. You're traitors. You're traitors to the nation. The Confederacy is not. It's not nothing to be proud of. Let's talk about that. You're treasonous. Let's use the correct word. But see, they have that old, what do they call it? That old Southern lie of worshiping and putting the Confederacy up there like it's something to be proud of. It's not. Anyway, so my dad is very proud of me for the work I have done. I got the Confederate flags down, got the American flag lifted, and I used my dad's military service. I told him, I said, my father is a military veteran, and I'm ashamed for any military person that has to walk up this mountain that served this country, and particularly soldiers of color, and you got this damn Confederate flags hanging up there. Why can't you put the American flag up there? For the sake of our military. That flag represents everything. That flag represents all of our history. That's the most appropriate flag to fly, not the Confederate flag. That's disrespect to our United States military. And I think that did something. I think that did something. The disrespect to the military. I think that that had some kind of impact. I believe so. I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to continue to talk to my dad. I loved our conversation. It was so revealing. He's very opinionated. He has so much to say about the upper echelon. My dad, he was about to make major when he got out of the military. He was captain, but he was one of the few black officers. It wasn't a lot of them um, in the 80s. My dad did very well for himself. My dad is brilliant. My dad's so smart. And I just love talking to him. I love hearing his stories. And I keep telling him I want him to write a book so bad. I want him to write a book because I just want him to tell stuff that he's such a, I don't know, he's such a closed, it's kind of, I don't know, it's weird because I intuitively am very close to him. Just I have a closeness to him. I've always had. And it's just there, like two people could be in the room and they just get each other. Very close. But if you were ask me certain stuff about him, stuff I'm curious about, his inner thoughts about certain things. I don't know. I care so much. I just think he's really an interesting person. I told him that day, I said, Dad, you are very interesting. I think you something else. Some of the stuff he would say. And yeah, I enjoyed the conversation. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna talk to my dad more about the military. Not like I'm sneaky trying to get information, but it's something that he opened up today. I hadn't seen that side of him before. He's got so much invested in his past in the military. So he usually talks a little bit, but he was talking a lot today. He was talking a whole lot. And I was just soaking. I'm like, my eyes was popping. I was like, my daddy is talking. He was talking a mile a minute. I was like, wow, wow, wow. He's very opinionated. So anyway, that was kind of cool. That was kind of cool. Anyway, all right. I just wanted to share that my update about my dad. He was not a military spy, but he did produce spy mobiles called communications, i.e., Signal Corps. He did produce those, so I do understand he's a high tech, highly savvy tech person, and I do remember that about him growing up. He's very very tech savvy, so it makes sense. That's his specialty. Anyway, Ashe, appreciate you, Big Dub. Appreciate you, Mahogany, and whoever else is listening. Ashe, y'all have a good day.